I want to say, though, that this is particularly devastating to me because it implies that after you're dead, your ghost can change outfits. And like, I've been out here dressing every day like it might be my last. Like, if I'm going to be a ghost, I'm going to be fly as hell.
Hello and welcome to Saving People Queering Things, the supernatural podcast where the guilt that haunts the Winchesters turns out to be literal ghosts sent to torment them.
Today we are pulling up to season 4, episode 2. Are you there, God? It's me, Dean Winchester.
I'm Abigail, one of your hosts, and my pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Elayna. My pronouns are she, they. And with us today, we have two of our favorite co-hosts that we love having, our dear friends from Driver Picks the Podcast. It's Jamie and Beth.
Hello.
That was so synchronized and I loved it.
Occasionally we share the brain cell.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that for you.
We're so happy to have you back.
We're very happy to be here.
And this is my first time getting to do an episode with both of you. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
And it's our first non-goofy episode to record together. So that's fun.
Yes, yeah. It's a very not silly haha episode. It's a very much intense emotional episode.
We all have a lot of feelings episode.
Mm-hmm.
Hey everyone, it's Noah. Just needed to pop in here with a quick update and then I'll let you get back to the rest of the episode. For the start of season 4, we really wanted to do something special to try to connect with our listeners more. And so Abigail spent a lot of time and effort creating a gorgeous piece of embroidery that really draws all the elements of our show's energy into one piece. It's got rainbow colors across it, one of the best quotes from Supernatural so far. It's got Tiny the Ghost from our logo. It's just honestly so gosh darn cute. I wish I could win it, but even better, one of you will win it. All you've got to do is head over to our Twitter page at queering_things. Make sure you're following us if you aren't already. Our giveaway post is live as this episode airs on September 26th, 2022. Go check it out and you could be getting your very own work of art from us over here at Saving People Queering Things. Now, sadly, this giveaway is limited to our listeners in North America specifically, just because this embroidery weighs a little bit, and so we don't have the funds to send it overseas. We are planning out and working on an all-inclusive listener giveaway for a bit later on in the season, so stay tuned for that. But for now, we've got this absolute masterpiece. Honestly, I can't stress enough how cute this is, so seriously, go to Twitter right now and just let Abigail know how great you think it is. We would absolutely love to do more of these giveaways, so just let us know what you would like to see given away. Maybe we'll make it happen. One more time, that's at queering_things. Go check it out. Enjoy the rest of the episode. Jamie had me in stitches.
Well, now that you've met all of our hosts for today's episode, it's time to catch you up. So if you haven't watched Supernatural recently, here is what you've missed on the road so far.
Episode 2.
I will do this episode and I will probably fuck it up. I think both times I've done this, I have gone over the limit.
I believe in you.
Thank you, Elayna.
Are you ready?
Can one ever truly be ready?
Not for this.
No. First up, Jamie is going to recap the season so far. Let me know when you're ready.
Okay, gotta stretch it out like I'm a fucking athlete here. Okay, I think I am ready.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, supernatural stuff's real. Monsters are real. We've got a family of 3 people, 2 sons and a father. John's a dick. We're moving on. He was missing. He was found. Now he's dead. Okay, now we're getting up to season 2. There's something funky going on with Sam. His blood isn't normal human blood. It's like demon blood or some shit. Okay, now they're in the Hunger Games. Sam's dead. Dean sells his soul so that Sam's alive now. And then Dean dies because he sold his soul for Sam. He was in hell. Now he's not in hell. Maybe it's angels. Who fucking knows?
That was actually quite good.
That was
marvelous.
That was incredible.
I'm so glad you did that and not me.
I thought you were getting down to 8 seconds left and you hadn't hit season 3 and I was like, oh no. And then you pulled it out in the last 4 seconds.
To be fair though, nothing happens in season 3.
No. They spend 3 seasons working up
Dean's dying and that's the entire plot line.
Yes.
Yeah, they develop nothing else.
That is why I enjoy it. It is such a good season. And now Beth is going to do our recap for this week's episode. Beth, are you ready?
I'm never ready, but I'll give it a red hot go.
That's the spirit.
You've used that phrase other times and I love it.
right, I'm going to count you in. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so basically this entire episode is just an argument on faith. So Dean is like, no, God can't be real because shit keeps happening. That's terrible. And I can't accept that. And Sam's like, no, Dean, angels are real. I've been telling you this since season 1. What are you talking about? Is the Sarah Gamble long con? And then Bobby and Sam and Dean are all being attacked by ghosts from their past. They figure out that they are witnesses because it's a seal that's been broken by Lilith. Oh no. And then Cass comes at the very end and he explains it to Dean. He's not a like sit on your shoulder angel. He's a warrior of God and like they're at war and it's a whole thing. And maybe Lucifer is going to rise. Who knows? It's bad.
Wow. Look at that.
I got it much better than last time.
Do you know what? I stayed within the 30 seconds. So by default,
Yeah.
it is, I'm technically
Last time I was sitting here going, Ben, stop.
That was a really good recap. That was a
Yeah,
really good
that
recap.
was a wonderful set of recaps. Like, you actually caught us up fully on literally everything basically we need to know. Marvelous. It is now time for us to pick some music that will accompany us on our journey for discussing this episode. This is part of our endeavor to collect a bunch of songs to turn into a season 4 mixtape. So this is what we have for this week.
Yeah, I'll start us off. The song I've chosen for this week is Liar by the Arcadian Wilds. I think it works really well for the themes of this episode, and I am excited about it.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. The song I chose this week was Overwhelmed by Royal and the Serpent. And it's not completely, but it's a song about not knowing what the fuck is happening. And like everything's just too much. And it also has like the glitchy TV noises, which big like 401 vibes.
Nice.
And like the interference that comes along with the angels.
Ooh, I like it.
I love that.
So the song I chose is Hammers by Alec Benjamin. And I love Alec Benjamin just generally, but this song in particular is, it's hammers, which has its own like supernatural connotations, but it's all about basically like if hammers can be used to destroy things, surely they can also be used to build things back together. And like the choice that you have of like, what do you do with the tools in your hands? Do you use them for their destructive purpose or do you use them to fix the things that are being destroyed?
Love that.
Ooh, I like that.
That's really good. My song pick for this week is Broken Crown by Mumford and Sons. One, because I feel like it's got a really good sound, like tonally, like it just is very similar and on par with this episode, but it's also just got a lot of lyrics that are like very direct nods, I feel like, to what Dean is going through. Like the pull on my flesh was just too strong, stifled a choice in the air in my lungs. Like, come on. Like that's it's just such a good song for
the pull on my
vibes
flesh
of-
is a very literal.
Yeah, it's just really good.
Nice. This is a good set of songs. This is a very intense set of songs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, now that we've got our mixtape, it is time for the Hunt of the Week. And we're going to start our discussion on today's episode, which is Are You There, God? It's me, Dean Winchester. And we're talking about this episode through the theme of grief. Anywhere anyone would like to start with their thoughts on the episode?
Grief fucking abounds through this episode. Like the fact that the theme is grief and we're dealing with ghosts of people they didn't manage to save. Like sometimes it's a little too on the nose and I enjoy it.
I do think it's really worth mentioning, though, the biggest loss that Dean suffered in this episode is the fact that he sent Sam specifically to the store for pie and Sam didn't get it for him.
Oh, that was my like for this season, that was my official something is wrong with Sam moment, because they even have in there like this little nod where he's just like, when have I ever forgotten the pie? Like he always remembers it. And so when he gets in that car and he doesn't have it and Dean's just like, where's the pie? I was like, oh,
Sam's priorities are just all out of whack.
he is not himself. What's going
Okay.
on?
But what gets me about that moment is he's specifically going to the store for pie. That's why he's going. Like the catalyst of him going to the store is for pie.
Okay, Elayna, I'm really glad that you brought up like that this episode triggered your like, oh, something's up with Sam moment, because I also have a something is up with Sam moment for this episode.
Ooh.
But it's very, very different and it's for a really different reason.
Okay.
It's actually, and this is actually, it could tie quite well into like your theme of grief for this episode as well. When Dean is being confronted by Meg, right, later in the episode, kind of like,
Oh yes, the human. I was like, there is no Meg in this episode. No, it's okay. By the human, not the demon.
yeah. So when Dean's being
returned from the war.
when Dean is being confronted by Meg, sort of in the third quarter, I guess, of the episode, getting into the second half. Anyway, she has this quote where she says, you know how little siblings are. She was never the same after I disappeared. She just got lost.
Oh, yes.
So
Oh, yes.
Right. Now, watching
big mystery spot vibes there.
Yeah,
Oh,
big
yeah.
mystery spot vibes, and also like carrying on into later season 4 when we find out more about how Sam was dealing in the months that Dean was dead.
Mhm.
And, you know, and Meg even specifies, like, you know, I had this little sister, you know, she worshipped me and, you know, all this stuff, like she really looked up to me. And then, you know, can you imagine what she was going through when I just wasn't there? And, you know, it's very specific, I think, to, the fact that in Sam's grief, he just gets lost. And it's I guess, talking about like what you mentioned, like Sam is just not himself as he has been in the last 3 seasons, because he never forgets the pie. Like he could never do that. But, you know, he's gotten lost in that sense.
It's a really good point.
And he's gotten lost in his grief. And then because of that, when Meg confronts Dean with that, there's the grief that Dean has about letting Sam down at the same time as he was trying to save him. You know, of like leaving a sibling behind is its own particular kind of grief, and for him to be confronted with like the fact that Sam was not okay, is a whole thing.
The one thing I like, kind of going off of what you were saying, I just feel like Meg presents a really good foil for kind of both the brothers in this episode, like in terms of talking about the grief, because it's like the things that she's saying to Dean, like he very much gets what she's describing because of his worry for Sam, but also like in talking about the sibling, like, you know, her sister, like she's basically describing what Sam went through.
Yeah. And there's even the quote where she says, "Do you have any idea what it feels like to be ridden for months by pure evil while your family has no idea what happened to you?" And it's like, yeah, actually, he does. You know, and so you make a great point. Like, it's very much, we're getting through Meg, like in a very like narrative sense, a really interesting sort of outside perspective on both of what Sam went through and what Dean went through in terms of like their grief. And they're both grieving different things in very different ways as well. I think Sam obviously was grieving Dean, but I think Dean is in his own way like grieving almost an innocence, I guess. Yeah.
The idea that, like, you know, Dean knows that about himself. He knows he doesn't want to live in a world without Sam. One of the reasons he made the deal originally, but I don't think he's confronted until he comes back. He's not confronted with the fact that Sam also doesn't want to live in a world without him.
Yeah. One thing that we have talked a lot about on our pod, and I know you guys have talked a lot about as well, is like the parent-sibling complex between the brothers, where like it's like Sam and Dean have a very different understanding of what their relationship is. Like Dean is like, "No, I am your fucking parent," and Sam's like, "We're siblings," and it's
like normal siblings are.
Yeah. And so Dean kind of like has a very different idea of like their relationship than Sam does, and so it's like a different kind of responsibility to each other, I suppose.
Yeah. Dean's like, of course I sacrifice everything for you. Like, that's what a parent is supposed to do for their kid. Whereas Sam's like, we sacrifice everything for each other, which is like a very different, like Dean is so much characterized by like the responsibility piece and the, like, this is my role in our relationship.
Yeah.
It comes from such a different place, but Sam can't see it because he's the child in the relationship.
Well, and on the parent note, like also just the way to just hit us in the face with the symbolism of Bobby, like being afraid, like having to deal with 2 kids, specifically like sisters that he couldn't save. Like they felt like such a stand-in for the fact that Bobby feels like he let Sam and Dean down because he wasn't able to save Dean from going to hell. And so because he wasn't able to do that, he wasn't able to stop Sam from going down whatever this path he's on, that I'm sure Bobby can tell that Sam is not the same right now. He's just
Sam fucking ghosted him.
Yeah, I was gonna say Sam like dropped off the map. Yeah.
And so it's like, so Bobby really did lose both of them.
Bobby watched them both die.
Yeah, he watched them both die, and the spirit that is confronting him with this rising of the witnesses is 2 children that died right out of reach of him, that he like just barely couldn't save. And I feel like that is sometimes the symbolism in the show is very, very good, and this is one of those episodes where they just really nail it.
I had not even thought about those kids being a stand-in for Sam and Dean, but I think that you're absolutely right. I was also thinking about grief in terms of Bobby as, he became a hunter because of his own grief. And he's also, because he's chosen to put himself in a position of being a resource to other hunters, like he opens himself up to way more possibilities for grieving, because he loses other hunters like way more than John did, who was isolated from all the hunting community. Like Bobby knows all of the hunters, all of the he knows everyone. So like Bobby has to watch friends die a lot more often than most hunters.
I think what this episode also does is it glosses over that the people who are dying are not just hunters, they are Bobby's friends. There is a reason that Bobby was reaching out and discovered that hunters were dying. And this episode gives Bobby no room for the grieving process at all. He's just learned that 20 of his friends and co-workers are dead, and he gets no bandwidth given to him to be able to mourn this loss, which is a significant part of the community that he's been part of for, like, we don't actually have a timeline at this stage, but we know that it has been at least a couple of decades. We know that he has been part of this community for years. He does not get given the opportunity to express any sort of grief at the loss of any of these people that he has known for years.
Yeah, and one of the things that really struck me about this episode with Bobby in particular is it reminded me so much of Dream a Little Dream of Me, 310. And the whole, like, the sequence where Bobby comes across the children and he's like going down through the corridor with the crowbar really, really reminded me of in 310 when he was being confronted by Karen when she was possessed. And again, it's like another sense of he didn't have time to grieve that loss because he has just been thrown into this world where all of a sudden things are not what they seem and everything is much scarier and much more dangerous. And it's actually quite a constant with Bobby's character.
And because of that role that he's taken, I think he feels a responsibility for other hunters because he is a resource. He is someone that is there at the drop of a hat to like answer the phone and be like, okay, you need this resource, you need this ingredient for a spell, you need this, like I can provide that. And so like it's even more devastating when a hunter dies that he couldn't help because he is the guy who usually helps people get out of those sort of situations, who provides that information.
Also interesting that this episode they chose to go with his grief literally suffocating him and silencing him.
Well, that's brutal.
Actually, it is really interesting the ways in which the different like spirits target each of like the characters in this episode. And actually I really wanted to mention, I think KJ has that theory about how every time Dean like dies or nearly dies, it's always to do with his heart.
The heart attack
theory. I literally have in all caps a heart attack theory.
Yeah.
On these notes.
And so so it's really interesting, like in this episode even like it kind of comes back to that. And like you made the excellent point about like Bobby being silenced by the ghost. And then I have a question about when Henriksen attacks Sam. And my question is how Sam isn't dead, because the way that his head gets smashed into that sink.
How buff is Sam actually?
And then he somehow has the ability to fucking recall the like symbol on Henriksen's hand. I'm like, dude, how are you not completely concussed?
Well, it's like Sam being thrown through the fence by Jake in season 2, and you're like, that's the moment you should have died.
How buff is Sam actually?
Yeah.
Very buff. Sam's skin is actually armor.
Yeah.
Yeah, they taught him that at SPN'verse.
At this point, he's more demon than man.
That is an actual legitimate theory. That actually could be why.
Actually,
Sam's harder to kill because demon blood.
I do have a question, and Elayna, I'm going to ask you specifically because you are a native US citizen.
Oh, fun.
Oh, that's the first time we've actually been able to say that.
I know. I've never had a
primarily dealt with Canadians so far.
I will accept your condolences at this time. Please proceed with your question.
I watching the show, I have so many questions for Americans, and I usually don't have someone to actually ask. But so public bathrooms, I have to know. I actually like that.
Okay.
Because what the fuck?
Okay, clearly never been to a truck stop in the middle of Australia.
Well,
yeah. Okay. Public bathrooms. Yeah. Okay. First of all, I'm going to start from this point. You're asking the wrong person because I live in Philly and Philly is very dirty. Just overall. So I've seen worse bathrooms than that
So
one.
jot that down.
You've seen worse?
I've seen worse.
Have you not seen worse?
No.
Yeah.
I've also seen worse here in
But
Canada.
that being said,
What sort of world are you living in that's a hideous public bathroom?
Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, it's disgusting, but like also it still seems functional. So that's an improvement on some of the bathrooms I've been to.
Yeah, it's very indicative of the Supernatural really leans into this bumblefuck middle of nowhere vibe.
They
and
do,
it treats
yeah.
it like
Americana vibes.
everywhere is like that. Most places, like I mean, maybe this is just because I'm from Pennsylvania and maybe Pennsylvania has decent roads, like, you know, roadside places or something. But any of the times that I've driven like cross state, they're usually not that bad at like standard
No.
places. But Supernatural, just as a show, has a habit of making its road stops. They're all stuck in the 80s in this
They
weird
do the
way.
same thing with the motels.
Yeah, the
Yes.
motels are all like stuck in the 70s. Like
Yeah.
motel rooms do not look like that. They don't have like the hipster, you know, barriers in them. They don't have kitchens usually. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
very
They're-
bizarre.
Like, don't
Yeah.
get me wrong. Like, I've used long drops. Like, we have those. But usually,
What the fuck is a long drop?
I have no idea what a long
You don't
drop
know what a
is.
long drop
Never heard that
Okay.
term in my life.
A long drop
Nope.
is essentially it's a really deep hole in the ground, and it's surrounded by like a small wooden shed, and you just
so
go
it's like
in there and you
a
just
worse porta potty.
yeah, you just go, and then that's it, and then
Oh.
it's for like campgrounds usually.
Yeah,
Oh
we
yeah, we
would-
have like porta potties for those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
we
no, this
either-
isn't. This is
No,
not
no.
a porta potty. This
No,
is
no,
just the
like-
ground.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've also seen that at campgrounds.
Yeah, we would call those latrines.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that's
whenever
the
I
problem as
heard the
well.
word latrine, I just assumed it was a
outhouse.
different word for toilet.
no,
we sometimes call it
it's
outhouse as well.
oh
here.
outhouse. Yeah,
Oh,
outhouse
okay.
is typically the term for that. But yeah, those are definitely.
No, see, our house is just a toilet outside.
Long
Yeah,
drop
this is
just
different.
sounds intimidating.
Oh,
It's
no, outhouse here usually means rustic. Like usually means it's like mostly a
Oh,
shack.
Our house is normally in Australia. Our house is normally just a shed with a toilet in it.
But like it's an
Yeah,
actual
that's-
toilet,
yeah.
not just a long drop.
Here it could be either.
yeah.
We don't have a separate word for when it's just
I'm really
Oh.
enjoying the cultural discourse that's occurring this episode.
Yeah, this is great. This
Um,
is like when we found out that you guys don't have dot points.
But yeah, one other point about grief that I really wanted to make, relating to Dean specifically, is the grief that he's kind of going through in like reckoning with this realization. I think the line that he says is like, God gives a crap about me personally. Like he just
Mhm.
refuses to buy that if there's a God, that he wants anything to do with saving Dean or protecting Dean. And like, he just does not, like, there's this weird grief that feels grafted onto the fact that he does not believe in anything good for himself. And it just hurts.
This is kind of what I was getting at when I said that I feel like Dean is grieving an innocence.
Yeah.
I feel like he is grieving not only the innocence that he lost during his time in hell, which will get touched on, I'm sure, in later episodes a little bit more explicitly, but he's also grieving a simplicity because up until this point, like all through to seasons 1, 2, and largely season 3, we didn't really have this like sort of overarching plot in the same sense. It was very much like every job was pretty individual, like it was like episode of the week, monster of the week kind of thing. And now we've reached a point in the series where everything is much more sort of overarching in a different sense. And it's a lot more, I guess,
the stakes are higher.
the stakes are higher, but there's also like the world has been opened up in a brand new way. And I guess now that they're aware of it, like now that the door's been opened, they can't close it again. And so I think he's sort of grieving the loss of this simplicity in a life before hell, where everything was still shit, but at least it was like manageable shit.
It was the devil that he knew.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's actually really interesting because I was thinking about how the fact that now we're getting closer to like the idea that there's a God, like that's its own kind of loss of innocence and grief. Cause like you said, Beth, like he's been able to sort of compartmentalize hunting a little bit more as a smaller thing. Whereas if there's a God and everything is still shit, then like that is a totally different grief.
Yeah.
Because he was like, part of the reason Dean has said he doesn't believe in God is because he's like, I can't believe that there's a God. And if there is, that they allow all of this shitty stuff to happen. But now he's being confronted with like, if not proof, he's been confronted with other characters who are like, there's a God, or there's something, some higher power, you know, that sent the angels or whatever. He's been confronted with that being more likely of a reality. You know, he doesn't know it for sure, but now there's a possibility of it. And then he's grieving that because that makes everything so much worse.
Look, he has that entire speech about like, why does God give us shit about me? And I just thought, wouldn't it be fucking hilarious if Dean Winchester is the only person on earth that he gives even slightly a shit about? If like God is like, Dean Winchester is my Blorbo. If God is one of us.
God is like, Dean Winchester is my main character.
If God is like one of the 6 Dean coded people in our friendship group. And it's like, yes, Dean is my Blorbo. I don't care about anyone else. I just care about Dean.
Elayna, are you okay?
Elayna's experiencing Jamie
for the first time.
Brainworms for the first time.
That
Hi, nice
sentence.
to meet you. Sometimes people call me Psychic Jamie.
That just no, it was the I don't remember the last time I feel like I heard someone speak Tumblr out loud, like as a language, and it was just really nice. Like it was very unexpected that Dean Winchester is God's Blorbo, because he's definitely mine, so like relatable. But that was beautiful. I just transcended to a new layer of fandom because of
Let's
that.
face it, God's a Tumblrina.
Actually, is it canon he had a cat blog?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yes, it is.
We can confirm at least that.
Yeah.
We won't say how we can confirm it, but
This is actually kind of tangentially related to the point that I wanted to make.
Okay.
Which is when
I just had a thought and I wanted to share it.
I loved it.
it was great.
yeah.
God tier, one might say.
Coming back to when Dean is being confronted by Meg, basically she's saying, when she's describing her possession, she's saying that, you know, she was trapped and screaming and praying for his help. And she actually says, you're supposed to help people. Why didn't you help me? And I think that really encapsulates how Dean is feeling about faith and about God.
Oh, yeah.
Because the whole thing is, he's like, if you're here, why the hell aren't you helping me? Why am I suffering? Why am I going through all of this trauma and all of this grief? And then you're telling me that I'm special? You're telling me that like you have plans for me, but then like, why the fuck aren't you helping me? Like I am here, and like literally the episode is called, Are You There, God? It's me, Dean Winchester.
To quote a random Crossroads Demons from like season 3, your misery is the entire point.
Yes, exactly.
I'll see myself out.
Dean even says, like, he's like, how does he live with himself? Why doesn't he help? Connected to what you said, Jamie, like if God is there and Dean is going through everything he's gone through, he's asking questions about like, do I deserve to be saved? I'm just a regular guy, but he's sort of realizing like maybe in God's perspective, you're not just a regular guy. I don't like getting singled out at birthday parties, much less by God.
Yeah.
Also, the analogy of like God wants you to strap on your party hat is the funniest shit I've ever heard.
But also, let's face it, Dean Winchester never went to a birthday party as a kid. If he went to a birthday party, it's because he threw Sam a birthday party by himself.
In their motel room with a single gas station cupcake.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The last and only birthday party that he went to was his son, Ben Braden's. But the one line related to that of Dean's that hit me just so hard when I was rewatching it this particular time was when she says to him, she's like, you think you're a hero? And he's like, I don't.
Yeah.
He's never thought he was a hero. That's from season 1. He is not.
Yeah.
He postures as a hero, but he doesn't actually think he is one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
One of the-
4,000% believes that sentence when he says it. And that breaks my heart.
One of the things that in 310, actually, that whole episode was full of things where I kept saying to Jamie, like, this will be important later. And she hated it the whole time. But one of the things that I brought up was Sam actually says to him in that episode, he's like, I've given up on trying to save you. You don't even want to be saved. And then I was like, that's going to be important later because it's not actually quite true. Like that's what Sam perceives. But
this
then you
is
get
a helpful tool we can use later.
Exactly. But then you get to 401 and you have Cass say, you don't think you deserve to be saved. And that's it. That's the nail on the head. Like Sam was kind of in the ballpark, but Cass is the one who sees it and gets it exactly nailed on the head.
Gee Willikers, I wonder why.
Dean is reckless, and all of the decisions he makes can be interpreted as not wanting to be saved, but it's nobody is reckless like that unless they have a reason. And Dean's reason is that he doesn't think he's worth it. And like,
yeah,
he thinks his value is less than everybody else.
Which, thanks, John.
Like, his life is not worth somebody else's life. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I think there are very few people that he would think are worth less than him. So if to save somebody else, what he has to do is sacrifice himself, he's going to do it. Like, it's not even math to him. One person, two person, three person. He looks at how much they are worth and how much he is worth. And he goes, I'm worth jack shit.
Yeah. I mean, think about in what is and what should never be. You know, I know what you would say, Dad, your life for all those people, your soul, your life for all those people, your happiness for all those people, like no contest. The fact that he was always bait as a child and teenager and adult, he has literally been positioned as like, you can be the one that we maybe sacrifice in order to save someone else.
Yeah, you're the one who's disposable.
Yeah.
Do you know what's really interesting that's just occurred to me as you guys were saying that? Is if you think about the people, like the spirits who are confronting like our protagonist in this episode, Sam is confronted by Henriksen and later confronted by Meg. Bobby is basically only confronted by those two girls, but Dean is confronted by Henriksen, Ron, and Meg. He blames himself for all of those.
Yeah.
And even when Meg and Henriksen confront Sam, it is in a much lesser sense than the way they're confronting Dean.
They're not confronting Sam on his identity in the same way.
No. And I think it's interesting because like the whole point of these witnesses is they're supposed to be kind of like demons in the sense like they're going for the kill shot, like they're going for the thing that's going to hurt. And if they can get like a more of a rise out of Dean because they know that like emotionally he's going to be more like susceptible, I guess, to this kind of attack. It's just really interesting just on, on top of what you were saying about, the way that Dean kind of, it feels responsible for everyone, but also, like Jamie was saying,
John has trained him from a young age to see himself as less valuable than literally everybody else on earth.
So it's not surprising that he's now carried that into his relationship with Sam, his relationship with Bobby, his relationship with all of these victims. Like even someone like Ronald, Ronald's a really interesting choice here because Ronald is a civilian who tried to come in and help, who didn't know any, who they tried to keep out of it. And then Dean tried to like basically tell him the truth so that they could actually like continue to protect him. They've had a lot of civilians they could have chosen for this role, but they choose Ronald, who like Dean saw some of himself in. This like guy who wants to be a hero.
Yeah. But also objectively, Ron's death was less on Dean and more on Sam.
Absolutely. Yeah. But Dean is clearly that what Dean has internalized is not that.
Not that Sam is in any way responsible for Ron's death, but like if you were going to say which of the two brothers would you say is more responsible for Ron's death? It's Sam.
It's also interesting that, like Henriksen and Ron, like those are from the same storyline too, which is also just an interesting like connection there of they've dragged all of these people into their lives, like Ronald, Henriksen, Meg, they're all there because of the bigger story of the Winchesters, because the Winchesters are looking for the yellow-eyed demon, because they're willing to do anything to stop who killed their mom. Like everyone's there because of like rotating around them. These are not like from random hunts. These are from hunts that are very specifically tied to like big shit.
Winchesters and who they are.
It's an odd choice to have it be sort of Ron confront Dean. But I mean, let's face it, Dean feels guilty about everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm surprised he only had 3 people come after him with the guilt complexes that he carries.
This is it's going to be a wild heel turn, but there is a Star Trek reference in this episode.
Yep.
Yes.
I need to point out because that's a big deal for me. He mentioned, he's talking about, like,
let's go to Vegas.
Do the Star Trek experience, Grand Canyon, nerd Dean supremacy forever.
Well, like the fact that that's his response to this is the apocalypse. And he's like, well, let's go see the Star Trek experience.
He's like, what have I always wanted to do?
I always wanted to do.
Yeah.
I also just want to point this out because we're going to have 2 weeks in a row with a Star Trek reference. We're going to have a Star Trek reference next week too, that I also love. So I'm living my own personal moment here.
I had a thought just now, because we were talking about like which characters they chose to come back and sort of like be the witnesses. And I thought, like, it's interesting which ones they chose and who they chose to see. Can you imagine if Jeffrey Dean Morgan had been available?
Oh.
Because I think that would have been something else.
I don't think I would have been emotionally, psychologically, metaphysically in any way prepared for that.
That would have been, for Dean in particular, that would have been the ultimate. Actually, do you know what? Depending on what spirit John knew, maybe Sam.
That would have maybe actually made this episode hit for Sam in a totally different way.
For Sam.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm really curious. If you guys were to make this episode, what ghost would you choose from the previous episodes of Supernatural to target the Winchesters?
Definitely John.
Yeah, definitely John.
John would be really interesting.
See, because the person, look, we don't meet them actually in Supernatural, but we do learn of them. The character that I would want to see confront Dean is the gay school teacher that dies in faith so that Dean can live. When the preacher's wife is controlling the Reaper and she forces him to like switch out who's gonna die.
And the callbacks to faith in this fucking episode particularly.
That would have been so good.
The Sarah Gamble long con is fucking real.
I'm definitely not going to go and open my fanfic idea document and write that down because I'd like to be able to come back to that.
I have one that I don't know if y'all will be expecting, but I, for one, would love to have seen Dean get confronted by that Vietnam Army vet from Croatoan, the one that like drives off and is like going to be okay or whatever.
Yeah.
And then
especially because we don't know if Dean even knows that he died.
Exactly. And he was a character that like Dean, just like anybody from like that Croatoan episode, but specifically him because he seemed to have like a pretty deep connection with that guy because he was like, oh yeah, my dad was in the army too. And so like, I think that would have been a really interesting confrontation that I would have liked to see.
I think Ash would be interesting.
Ash would be one of my top picks as well.
Because he like, obviously like the last thing we get from Ash is him saying to Dean, like, you know, I've got information, but you know.
Ash would have been gut-wrenching.
Ava for Sam.
Ava.
Oh, yeah. Ava was robbed.
Ava would have been, or like Andy for Dean.
Oh,
yeah.
Andy.
I think it would have been really interesting to see Sam confronted by, I think her name is Madison from Heart.
Madison,
who was the werewolf.
This whole conversation is just...
Jess would also have been a prime suspect for Sam.
Yeah.
Because,
oh my goodness,
you know, he is directly the reason she's dead. He's not the cause of it, but he's the reason.
Imagine if Sam was confronted by Mary.
Oh, that's worse.
Y'all are making me feel things I didn't sign up for. I mean, I kind of did.
Do you know what? That actually would be really interesting actually to have one, like if John and Mary had both shown up for Sam, I think can you imagine? Like, and then you have 403 next.
Oh no.
God, that's interesting.
Oh, that would have been brutal.
Way to break our own fucking hearts.
What about the hunter that Sam kills in Bad Day at Black Rock while he's possessed by Meg?
Oh,
not Bad Day at Black Rock.
Not Bad Day at Black Rock. Born Under a Bad Sign.
That was my first episode.
Oh, that's a bit cute.
Yeah, every time that episode gets mentioned, I get like a little fuzzies because I'm like, oh, that was my first one. I would have also Corbett.
Yes.
Corbett.
Ted.
Poor sweet baby Corbett.
Sweet baby Corbett. Do you know what actually who would have been really interesting? And I don't know who the target would be, but Gordon.
Oh, definitely
Gordon
Sam.
would definitely be Sam.
But Dean is the one but the thing is, he doesn't have, I feel like emotionally, he'd go after Dean because Sam and him were always enemies.
Yeah.
They're always enemies. Whereas Dean and him had this like buddy connection. And then, like I think.
He could honestly, he could be for both.
That's true. Well, I mean, in this episode, we see them going after one and then the other, like with both Meg and Hendrickson. So.
That's what I was going to say.
We're just making ourselves feel bad at this point.
The secret good supernatural that lives in our heads.
I think that at this point, what I'm realizing is a lot of people have died.
Directly, a lot of people that they liked and made connections with have died.
Yeah.
Honestly, like I kind of wish that they'd gone with like, I think Hendrickson's a really solid choice. And like as much as I love the actress who played Meg, I don't love her as a choice for like this. I think there are certainly better choices that they could have made that would have been
They don't know
more...
her as a person.
Yeah.
Like they just don't. They met the actual Meg person once as she was dying.
Yes. And even then she was in so much pain that like they didn't really meet her. Like they were trying to save her life. Like that is...
Ronald and Henriksen are good choices because they actually were people that they knew. They just got caught in the crosshairs directly because of them. And also like Meg dies because she's possessed.
Yeah.
Whereas like the others die because they come into contact with the Winchester. Like it's a lot more directly connected to them.
I think for that reason in particular, Jess would have been heartbreaking because the whole point could be, you should have told me. If I had known, or if you had never, put me at risk by associating with me, like, I think that in particular would just absolutely gut Sam. Absolutely.
I agree. That was such a good question to posit.
Yeah.
Look, I have moments of brilliance. What can I say? I'm just that good.
I'm really sad that the listeners couldn't see the awesome hair flip that you did just now. But no, it was there, listeners. The hair flip is in your hearts.
Okay, I just want to say something real quick, because when we recorded our episode on 402, a banger of an episode, we have a guest on our episode too. I didn't realize this, but Naomi, who was on that episode with us, she's like, oh my God, Bobby keeps his cutlery in the second drawer. I'm like, no, he doesn't. Who fucking keeps it? He does.
In the second drawer? Like,
yes,
underneath another drawer?
We did a Twitter poll
what
about this.
What kind of monster
exactly
is Bobby Singer?
Right?
I thought I trusted him.
Does Bobby not use utensils?
Probably fucking not. But yeah, his cutlery drawer
I was like,
is the second drawer down.
Like, Bobby, what's in the top drawer? Never mind.
His kitchen, he has like 4 or 5 top drawers. It could be in any one of them. But he puts it in like the only bank of drawers that has like a second drawer.
I have never in my life been at someone's house where they've been like, yeah, the utensils are in the second drawer. Never once. I cannot think of a single house I've been in.
It's not like tongs and stuff. It's like literally like knives and forks. Because he goes, grab it. That second drawer has a false bottom. You've got to grab it out. And it's like the cutlery holder.
It's probably because they couldn't put a false bottom in the top, like in the set. And they were like, well,
That is a wonderful point.
On other, small notes that are important to make, I thought angels were supposed to be guardians, fluffy wings, halos, Michael Landon. If you don't know who Michael Landon is, okay. Michael Landon is an actor. I'm going to pull up a picture of him from his heyday. And I'm going to present to you a theory on Dean having a type. And the older men that he likes.
Obsessed with a picture of him in a cowboy hat. Which
so shows he was on Little House in the Prairie.
Oh, okay.
He's the father. He plays the father in Little House in the Prairie. He's also on a show. The show that is being referenced specifically here is Highway to Heaven, where he plays an angel character. Again, this buff angel character. He also is in Bonanza. So cowboy.
Stop it.
Dean has a fucking type, and his connection of Michael Landon and angels is just
angel
Galaxy
cowboys.
Is this fucking Tombstone foreshadowing?
That is what I was.
Yes. Yes. If you haven't before, listeners, look up Michael Landon specifically in Bonanza. Just get a good look.
He was Little Joe.
And just leave that in your heart for the next time that Dean casually references an older male from media that he may or may not have a giant crush on.
Galaxy-brained moments.
Glad I got to share that with y'all, because like the Michael Landon, like I grew up watching Little House on the Prairie, so I'm very familiar with Michael Landon from that specifically, but I know not everyone is, and so
my mom was big into Bonanza, so that realizing he was Little Joe I was like, oh, I know who that is.
That's my specific gay stuff in this episode.
I had a very quick point on that kind of note, actually. And I realized I forgot to mention it in our episode. So lucky I had a second opportunity, which is there's a really interesting camera shot where it's when Cass is waiting in the kitchen and Dean is like getting up and like walking towards him. And you have the shot where you can see Cass between Dean's legs. And that shot in particular is like, typically you would look between the woman's legs and you would see the like male counterpart.
Oh my God. That's literally a trope in movie posters, especially.
Yeah. And I think I referenced it in one of our early episodes, like, oh yeah, I'll remember to talk about that. And then I fucking forgot. So I was like, I have to mention it here, which, yeah, we get that shot, and it is so specific. And it's yet another example of Dean being film techniques that are typically used for female characters or female coded characters being used for Dean specifically. And it's very interesting. It's very recurring at this point.
Oh,
that is wild. I never noticed.
I hadn't caught that.
Once you see it, you're like, oh, that is so, like, what a bizarre choice. Because it's not even like a common angle. Like, it's not like, we don't get this bottom down, like, or bottom up rather, shots very often from this show.
It's a creative shot that they don't utilize a lot. And I didn't notice that specifically, but in that scene, the way they position both of them, where their marks are in terms of where they're standing, you know, obviously Cass gets right into Dean's personal space.
Personal
my
space.
God.
Who is she?
Like right in his face. And I know that's like the whole thing with Cass.
Oh my God.
Like we're getting, but also he's getting into Dean's space. He's like challenging Dean, and then Dean is challenging him right back. And neither of them pull away. There's this like sort of current between the two of them.
Tension. Yeah.
That like I don't even necessarily like think in this scene it's like a sexual tension. I just think there's this like magnetism to each other where Cass has not been challenged on his faith, and Dean just like pushes and pushes and pushes and goes like, maybe your assumptions about God are wrong. Maybe everything you're thinking is wrong. And Cass is like, you know, read the Bible. Like, I'm not here to perch on your shoulder. I'm not here for you. And Dean is like, well, maybe you are. Like, maybe there's something else here. Maybe what you're doing is actually wrong. Maybe God doesn't give a shit. And you can see Cass like sort of like it being a bit of a shock to him. But also he doesn't pull away from that conversation.
I also love in this episode the specification of the mark on the witnesses being a brand on their soul. And the like, you get a look from Dean as like a reactive shot from that. And it's like to his shoulder. And it every time, Elayna, your face.
Oh my God. I never noticed that before.
It looks the same. It looks like, you know, the raised brand on their hands is exactly the same style as they used for the handprint on his shoulder. And it's this, when you've been raised from the dead and you have this brand, not just on your physical being, but on your literal soul. Yeah.
But like, this is your purpose for coming back. Like, this is why you've been brought back. Like, those souls have been brought back for a purpose. Dean has been brought back for a purpose.
Yeah.
And Cass even says, you know, Cass ties their fates kind of together when he says, you know, you should show me some respect. I dragged you out of hell. I can throw you back in. Like, I have some sort of claim on you.
Exactly. And it's interesting because it's not just like, it's not, oh, God raised you or like heaven raised you. Like, I personally pulled you out of the pits of hell.
I dragged you out of hell.
Yeah. And then, I mean, made you crawl out of your own grave. But look.
I got you most of the way there. I think
that was, you know, I think that was a logistic problem. I think Cass didn't realize that he like kind of got 99. You know, it's like when you let something load 99.9% and you're like, it's fine, it's finished. Then you close the computer and then you open it up and you're like, oh, I guess it wasn't finished. Like, oops. Also, like, if Dean Winchester, no bisexual, why look at Cass's lips when Cass stands so close to him?
Yeah.
I would almost like to propose a counter of how many times does Dean look at Cass's lips when they're standing really close together, because I guarantee you it'd be off the charts.
Let's face it, it's because looking into Cass's eyes is too intimate.
Too much intimacy for Dean Winchester.
Yeah.
Too much.
Eye contact, way too vulnerable.
Or you could count it as autistic coding.
Also that, there's many ways, all of which are deeply held.
Either it's queer coding or it's autistic coding. Either way, we win.
This is like going to be the season of like trans autistic Dean coding supremacy, and I'm very excited.
Cass autistic coding supremacy. We're going to talk about that a lot. We didn't in 401, but we are going to talk about it a lot starting now.
Yeah.
This is me being like a like ex evangelical religious, like raised religious sort of person. The line when Cass says, you know, the Lord works, and then Dean like interrupts and goes, if you say in mysterious ways, so help me, I will kick your ass. I'm just going to say I really appreciate it from my own experience of having that line the Lord works in mysterious ways like volleyed at me to like explain terrible things.
Yeah.
Dean being like, absolutely none of that bullshit is nice.
The reason I wrote that down and why I like thought about it as like a more interesting take for the episode is that the full quote is, "So help me God, I will kick your ass." And he removes it from the sentence. So it's like the Lord works, if you say in mysterious ways, "So help me, I will kick your ass." So like the God part is unspoken.
That's a really...
Dean is trying to remove God from his narrative because that is...
Honestly, same,
Exactly.
Dean.
And it's exactly, he even does it to Cass's name because Cass is Cass by this point. And the TL part is the of God part. So at this point, he's already removed God from the equation. He's like, no, I'm not having that shit. Mm-hmm.
He's asking Cass to do the same. He's asking Cass to question God.
Yeah.
This episode is like 3 days after Dean was raised.
Yeah.
Dean may be God's Blorbo, but God is not Dean's Blorbo.
Love to point out that another note from the doc is spirit whack-a-mole.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the thought. Just I saw that and it delighted me. So
I'm glad you appreciated it.
That's my final note on the main discussion.
I also noted Sam's wrapping his giant moose body onto this couch because Dean is like, I'll sleep on the floor.
Dean Winchester, better father than John.
Than John
Absolutely.
ever could be, but only on days ending in Y.
On that lovely note of John slander, let's move on to our going meta section where we are tracking lore, representation, behind the scenes trivia, and anything else fun that we didn't talk about earlier. First up, we have our rep check. So this includes things like the Bechdel test, any iterations of gender, relationship dynamics that we didn't get to talk about already.
I gotta say, the first thing that jumps out that I've always hated about this, a line that I hate from this episode, is when Meg is talking and she's like, "Oh, before that demon dressed me like a slut."
Yeah.
Like, you were in long jeans, normal t-shirts, and just leather jackets.
Yeah.
If you think that's, do you know what?
It's
Okay.
just like I hate the constant slutification of demons.
I would once again like to ask if anyone in the writer's room of Supernatural has ever met actually a human woman.
I don't know. It's a tough call.
Yeah.
Not at this point in the show.
Inconclusive.
Yeah. I also like that line always sits weird with me too. Not only just because like the inherent, first of all, like slut shaming, because like there is no such thing as a slut. Like honestly, it's so stupid. It's like we're all about supporting women being sexually active because like
exactly.
Live your life, sweetie.
Why would you care? Like if you were possessed by a demon, why would the first thing that bothered you be that? Like the way she dresses? She dresses a different way than you dressed as a human. Why is that like? Yeah.
Of all the violations that are happening to your body right now, like surely what shirt you choose to wear that day is not the main concern. Like it's a fair enough concern. Like it's a loss of bodily autonomy, but like it's not a loss of bodily autonomy in the same way as them being able to physically control your body.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's also really weird how they include that line, but then they also, to kind of make this difference, they have her having like this long soft hair and like
they feminize her.
Yeah, they feminize her. They give her this little, like white peasant top that's supposed to, suggest like innocence and purity and all that. And I hate it. I just hate how they characterize, like that's the only two iterations of women that exist to most of these writers, is like you're either this, very feminine, innocent, pure little girl that needs to be protected, or you're a slutty demon whore who likes leather jackets. And it's just, it's so reductive. Right. And it's annoying, and I just hate it.
We've only had a couple of characters at this point, 4 seasons in, that have actually not been either of those tropes.
Yeah, and it's frustrating.
What's really, really interesting about it is like, especially going to like female characters that we've seen die. Like if you look at Mary and Jess in particular, they're like long blonde hair, white nightgown, like that whole
symbols of purity, symbols of
Nancy in that category as well from Juice and Below.
From Juice and Below.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. There's a few others as well.
I want to say though that this is particularly devastating to me because it implies that after you're dead, your ghost can change outfits. And like I've been out here dressing every day like it might be my last. Like if I'm gonna get ghost, I'm gonna be fly as hell. So like, why am I putting all this effort in if I could change outfits after I die anyway?
And like, why are some of them in outfits that they died in and others are just in outfits they'd prefer?
Exactly.
It's weird.
And some of them are like really dirty and some of them are just not. And it's
I'd like to know where the ghosts do their shopping before reaching this plane, is my question.
Where's the ghost wardrobe? Where do you go to get your selection of, these are your options. You're dead now. Here's your options for what you can wear.
I create a sim.
And what's terrible is, see, I'm a recent player of Animal Crossing New Horizons.
Oh, okay.
I'm just picturing like Meg just waddling up to like the dresser and then being like, here's all your options. Like, what outfit most suits you today? It's just a weird mental image that I'm having now. Didn't ask
Okay,
for
it's a
it.
mental image that I love though. So thank you for sharing it.
You're welcome. So get this, I was looking into the lore and we have a huge swath of like important lore-y things.
So we didn't talk about it all, basically.
Who cares about the actual plot of Supernatural?
Bobby's panic room was a big one for me. I love Sam and Dean's reactions to it.
Mhm.
I also love in myself the burst of affection I have for this terrifying room.
Yeah.
I see the panic room and I'm like, oh, it's home. Shows you how much this is going to become a significant location in Supernatural. But
Yeah. My note was Bobby's panic room, my beloved, with little love heart eye emojis.
Yes.
the fact that Bobby's like, I had a free weekend.
Yeah.
As if this isn't several months worth of construction.
Okay,
I'm going to pull out
okay.
Trainee Jamie for a second here. You cannot build a structure like this, especially within an existing structure, in just a weekend. Like the demolition alone to make room for this structure would take a weekend.
I also want to know how the salt was incorporated into the iron, because he's like coated in salt. Like, is this like made of the same metal that those like, you know, weird goats from Tumblr back in the day were like licking the salt deposits
They crave
off of?
that mineral.
Yes. That's
that
all
just
I
took
could
me way
think.
back.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. I always wondered about this too. In my brain, what Bobby did was make like a really high concentration salt water, like as much salt as will possibly dissolve in a body of water, and then just got a paintbrush and just slathered it.
Oh, like it's like a lacquer.
Nah, see, what I'm thinking he's doing is getting normal paint and just dumping a whole bunch of salt in there, and then doing like 2 or 3 coats of that shit, and then just coating it in normal paint, so it seals it in.
I always so like assumed that maybe some of the steel, like some of it's hollow and there's just like salt poured, like literally salt poured in at points. And it's in, so like, again, kind of protected and can't wear away.
So while we're talking about salt, I want to talk about the first hunter we see die and how weird it is that she literally just puts a line of salt at the entryway to the room instead of just pouring out a ring of salt and standing in it.
Where's the salt hula hoop?
Salt
Exactly.
hula hoop.
Salt hula hoop.
Or the duffel bag, you idiot.
Ruby insinuates that the word is getting around. Theoretically, I guess that means demons, that Dean's been rescued by angels. So like again, we talked earlier about the stakes getting higher and like the world getting bigger.
But like, who told everybody?
Good question. We don't really know. Good question.
Because I used to wonder about this too, but I guess like Cass like going through and pulling Dean out of hell, there would have been witnesses to that, I guess. Like, it's not like...
Now I'm just imagining like the janitor of hell is like doing his job, sees like Cass running past with like fucking Dean Winchester's soul or whatever. And it's like, not my fucking job. And just continues on doing his work.
He's like, I don't get paid enough to care about the thing, to care about the souls here.
Yeah.
You want to steal something? Like,
Go nuts.
go have fun.
Where are they going to send me? Hell? While we're talking about this conversation that Ruby has with Sam at the start of the episode, she's like, oh, like, I'm scared of the angels. Like, Lilith's scared of the angels. And Sam's like, I'm not. It's like, yeah, but also you got to remember that, like, Lilith is scared of Sam. Like,
Sam's just like, if the like doesn't matter.
like Ruby at this point is like, oh my God, like even Lilith is scared of these guys. It's like, that's a low bar. Like Lilith is scared of Sam. Like
rock beats scissors, Sam beats Lilith. So like,
good point.
Like that's not how rock, paper, scissors work. But like also, oh my God, it kind of is. It's like Sam beats Lilith.
But, yep. Obviously, the biggest lore in this episode, though, is the rising of the witness as a sign of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And that this is basically like, this is when we find out that the seals are being broken to raise Lucifer. And angels are on Earth for the first time in 2,000 years because of this. This is how big this actually is.
So now that we finished with that, it is time for our last and one of our favorite parts of the episode, our character blessings. So we're gonna throw this to our guest host first. We'd love to know who y'all would like to bless this week.
Okay, so this week I would like to bless John Winchester, because if he didn't isolate his sons from the hunting community, they would be feeling a lot more grief this episode.
Jamie, I was not expecting that. I think I would like to bless the spirits who were raised as witnesses.
Yes.
And my reasoning is not because I think they did something particularly blessing worth in this episode, but just because I think they deserve it, because they already went through such a hellish experience only to die, to be put to rest, and then to be yanked from that and then forced to do these other horrible things. Like, Meg is a great example. Like, she already lost her autonomy so much in life, and now it's been taken from her even in death. Like, fuck that.
She can't get a fucking break.
I think those spirits deserve a blessing just for the fact that they had to go through that shit once they'd already been through so much.
I love that, because I think like one of the things with blessings is that you don't need to be you don't need to have done something to deserve a blessing. Like, you can just be, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They deserve it by virtue of just being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like that.
That's really good. So my blessing for this week goes to Dean, because of who among us can't relate to questioning their, place in the universe and, like cosmic level questions, especially after like the trauma that he's just so recently been through, to then get thrown into, as we said earlier, like, spirit whack-a-mole, like immediately after getting topside, just feels like a lot to take on. And I just, the way that he's questioning everything, I connected with very deeply in this episode. So a blessing for Dean as he tries to figure out what all of this means, gestures wildly at the cosmos.
I really like that angle of that blessing. I'm gonna bless Cass. It's my first time blessing Cass.
It begins.
I have no feelings about this at all. But I want to bless Cass actually for kind of the inverse of what, Elayna, you just blessed Dean for. And that's for like being someone who's very sure of what you believe, and then having someone come in and start throwing their experience, their tragedies, their doubts and questions at you, and those like actually starting to have an effect. Like, has Cass ever heard anyone doubt before? And Dean is just unrelenting in his doubts. And, I think a blessing for Cass for hearing those and starting to whatever's going through his mind, like he's being confronted with something that he's possibly never experienced before. And it's the beginning of an arc for Cass that's going to be really, really interesting. And so I wanted to bless him for that, because he responds in like mostly defensiveness and anger and fear himself, which is like very easy to do when your worldview is questioned, to be like, actually, I'm going to lash out.
Well, that, friends, is all that we have for you today. Thank you so much, Jamie and Beth, for joining us. This was an absolute delight.
Thank you for having us.
Lovely to meet you for the first time.
Yes, it was. Oh my gosh, like you've been the famous Jamie from the pod for so long, and now you have a face, and we're besties for life, because this is the Pod Squad and we have good times here. So make sure that you are subscribed to Saving People Querying Things wherever you listen to your podcast, and share the show with your friends. You can also follow Jamie and Beth and their shows, Driver Picks the Podcast and Thief Steals the Podcast, at the links in our episode description.
You can find all the links to our social media and join our Discord through our website, which is queeringthingspodcast.com. We are using our Discord to build listener community. So if you'd like to make new friends in the supernatural community or talk to our hosts about any episodes, you can come find us there. Be sure to ride along with us next week as we discuss episode 3, In the Beginning, through the theme of ignorance.
Thank y'all for coming along for the ride. We wish you a peaceful road until we meet again.